I do miss the opportunity to see people face to face, but when I realized timing wise I was going to be in Kansas City when I did this first session, I'm like, I'm fully vaccinated. If you don't mind me coming in, I don't mind being here. So this is awesome. I want to call up my first slide, which is a quote from Octavia Butler. And actually the quote was supposed to sort of be about me, because usually when people rattle off my laundry basket of background, they go, she was an attorney, she's a playwright, she's a journalist now, she's a writer, she's a this, she's a that. And there's a people have a tendency to not understand how someone can do all these different things in life. Like, they seem pretty fractured. They don't to me. There's a through line through it. And Octavia Butler, who, if you're not familiar with her, you need to like Google her the second you have left this conversation. She is a Black female science fiction writer who is my favorite kind of science fiction writer, in that it's not so much that she writes about little green men and Mars. She writes about an alternative reality if reality was different. And so this quote, I can't see it. Can everybody else see it? There we go. There we go. In order to rise from its own ashes, a phoenix first must burn. So that was going to be my quote to sort of tell you a little bit about me. But honestly, I think it's a better quote for what happened yesterday, right? Because what happened yesterday was an example. We'll see how long this example lasts, because this is America. Um, and where we have to burn, not literally as people like to think when we talk about this level of activism, but we have to burn what we know. And accountability by police officers is something that needs to happen. So we need to burn a philosophy that says that if a cop does it, it's okay. Um, and please don't take that as anti-policing. I'm all about the police when it's necessary. I just don't expect the police to show up guns blazing unless I say, help, I'm being murdered. Short of that, it's okay for you to wait until gunfire goes off. And so I like to think that what yesterday was an example of is how we're moving toward a reality in this society where accountability and compliance isn't something that just applies to people of color. And I'm not just talking criminal justice. I'm not just talking when you're arrested. I'm talking in the workplace, where if a white boss says something and a Black employee says something, that it's not automatically assumed that the white boss is telling the truth. Investigate. I'm a former employment attorney who represented the companies, believe it or not the individuals. I represented the individuals briefly. I realized companies are actually easier because then you're getting more at the root of the problem. Whereas if you're representing the plaintiffs, you're representing the people after the car accident has already happened. I'd rather fix the pothole than deal with the injuries of the person whose car hit the pothole. But I don't even do that anymore. That's one of the reasons I left law, because I have found that when it gets down to the get down, I want to have more of a voice in a way that law, believe it or not, doesn't give you. So my next slide, which thank you, Mariah, for bearing with me on my slideshow, is what is a Trojan horse? So some of you have heard about the Trojan horse, right? It's the hollow wooden statue of a horse where the Greeks concealed themselves in. So they put a horse outside of Troy, and Troy is like, oh, look, a present. Let's bring the present inside. Like Amazon delivery before Amazon. And so people bring in the wooden horse and then bam, what's inside but the Greeks, right? And then that's how they ended up, you know, fighting the good fight, because that was the only way to get inside of Troy, was to basically look like it's one thing, one pleasant, awesome horse, wooden horse, and then bam, it's like it's something else. So then with the next slide, you're probably going, what do Trojan horses have to do with either art? Mariah, just if you give me the next slide. I know this stuff is this. So we got technology, and then we got technology in 3 different rooms. It's hilarious. You gotta love technology. What do Trojan horses have to do with art or social justice? So to me, for me, so if you look at my background, I have a background where for one reason or another, I always have to be careful about what I say. So when I was a newspaper reporter in my 20s, I have to, in my job, I got to be careful what I publicly say about anything, because journalists are supposed to be objective, right? Then I became an attorney. So then I have to be careful about what I say, because I can't cast a bad light on the law firms, the esteemed law firms that I work for. So I got to be careful what I say, where I say it, how I say it. So then I left both journalism and law. And, you know, for those of you, I don't know if any of you ever read the Kansas City Star back in the day, I had a column called The Diversity Diva. And even still, there's a certain degree of care in which I had to speak when I'm a columnist for a major majority white newspaper in a majority white city, you know? So I always have to sort of couch how I say things, the way I say things, you know? Because again, this is something that if you are a white person, you don't realize. As a Black person, this applies to all groups who are mainstream, so to speak, non-majority, but it's particularly an issue if you are a Black person, that people are always judging you and how you speak and through all these different lenses. So you always, especially I'm of the age, I'm 56, I'm of the age where I always have to worry about not pissing people off. Even the use of the word pissing people off. There's somebody among you who's going, oh, I can't believe she uses that word in a presentation. You know, get over it. Trust me, I could go to the deep cuts of cuss words, but I'm not. So, but it's still that perception of always having to wonder and worry about. So that's why I love playwriting. Playwriting is the Trojan horse. Playwriting is, for me, is the place and the space where I can say all the deep things, all the raw things, all the upsetting things in their truth. In other words, not being mean, but being raw in a way that I can't be in any of my jobs where I expect my paycheck to clear. Okay, like playwriting is the place. So, you know, people, because art is social justice, I'd argue is something that pretty much most artists do. And if they're not doing it, personally, it tends to be art that I don't find all that interesting. But most art, there's a perspective that comes through whether you realize it or not. So Mariah, could we go to the next slide? So this slide, how do you know what you think you know? This is something that if you are a close friend of mine, you have heard me go on about this. How do you know what you think you know? I once did this talk at a workshop at church where I said, this is back in the long ago days where everybody's right in front of me. And I said, okay, this is just something I'm throwing out as an experiment. So don't get excited. I'm not actually taking you all to lunch afterwards. But how would you feel if I told you that I was taking you all out after this workshop is over for hamburgers, cheeseburgers, and French fries and onion rings and malt and shakes after this? And, of course, we all laughed about that. Are you sure you can't do that? That'd be fun. But everybody was like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Then I go, what if I said that after this workshop, I was taking you to go get tuna rolls and salmon and unagi and seaweed salad? Then you immediately see half the people go, or I immediately saw half the people go, ew, ew, isn't that sushi? Yuck, yuck. I said, okay, stop right now. For the half of you who had a negative reaction to sushi, how many of you have actually had sushi? So if I recall, the majority of people who had that reaction had never had sushi. I said, okay, so why do you have such a visceral reaction to something that you have literally never tried? Well, it's raw fish. I said, okay, it's raw fish, but you do know that billions of people eat raw fish daily and have eaten it for generations and hundreds and thousands of years who have better health. Yeah, but still, that just doesn't sound right. So I went, if you're having such a strong reaction to food you've never eaten, how much of your strong reaction to people that you've never met, to groups you've never had any exposure to, what's that about? Now, that landed, right? People got my point. Like, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. And that gets to art. How do you know what you think you know? Because most of us have some idea about things we don't know anything about, people we've never met, places we've never been, because of screens. So even me saying that I moved to Louisville, Kentucky, the number of people I've met who have a really bad, like, ooh, you moved to Kentucky? Okay, have you ever been to Kentucky? Well, half of them have, half of them haven't. Okay, well, why do you have a negative reaction to a place you've never been? Well, they'll go Mitch McConnell. Oh, Mitch McConnell. Okay, all right, but again, so there's no politicians you don't like who live where you live. Well, okay. Well, Breonna Taylor. Okay, Breonna Taylor is a recent issue. What is it you think you know about Kentucky, and where did you get it from? And most of the time, when you unpack anything that people think they know, whether it's, I don't like Black people, I don't trust Jewish people, I think LGBTQ people or trans people are weird. Literally, almost every time you have a conversation where someone has a reaction to somebody, you go, well, have you spent any quality time around any of these people? Have you been to this place? Have you done this thing? Well, no, but I've heard about it. Where have you heard about it? Well, TV, movies, or I read about it on Facebook. I mean, if you really unpack what you think you know about anything or anybody that you haven't had personal and direct experience with, usually you've got it through somebody's Trojan horse. Somebody or several somebodies over time have set up a dynamic for you that makes you feel like you know what something is about. So let me stop right now. If there's anybody who's hearing me on this, am I losing anybody on this?
Right, why don't you take us off screen share for a minute so it's easier for people to see, and for Michelle particularly.
Anybody have a reaction to what I just said? Is what I just said about how do you know what you think you know? Does that ring false to anybody? Nod your head if you agree with me. Shake your head if you think I'm off my rocker. Right?
Oh no, we're shaking our head. You're on, not that you're off. You're off.
And and what we can all relate to on this call is we're Midwesterners, right? Okay, we're either from Kansas or Missouri, or we live in Kansas or Missouri. And how many times when you traveled to California or New York, name a place, You mentioned where you come. The number of people I have personally met, because I'm from the Kansas side, there are Blacks in Kansas. Well, there were at least two when I was born. You know, I mean, I mean, but again, where do people get what they get from, right? Like we all do it. The best of us do this. This isn't just something that bad people do or that lazy people do. Literally every single one of us has an impression of something based on something we've seen. So Cornell West, let's
Can
get
I
back to this.
can I
Sure.
interject something, Michelle? Like, and I love to kind of draw the parents out when they're here. Um, or that feeling you've had as a parent where someone has a preconceived notion about your child, or that you've had about other children or about your children's teachers. Like, I think that that's a whole angle of what you're saying that has a lot to do with what we see happen in schools.
It's Let me give you an example. I worked in schools for 6 years. Okay. I'm not going to mention what schools I worked in, but they were both private, predominantly white schools, one of which I graduated from. Anyway, I digress. But at this one school, there was a new school year, pre-K, pre-kindergarten kids. And one of the teachers invited me because I was a diversity coordinator, part-time diversity coordinator for the school. And the teacher invited me to the class to meet the kids. And even though bigger kids are more my jam, little kids are so infectious, right? They're such little sponges, right? And so the kids are going around the circle introducing themselves. And in fact, to this day, whenever out of the blue I hear somebody, when I'm here in Kansas City, go, Miss Johnson, I know that that's a former student. Nobody calls me Miss Johnson, but a former student at a school that I've worked at. But anyway, so the little kids, so what, pre-K is 4 years old or so, they're going around, they're introducing themselves. All they're doing is giving their names, mind you. That's important in this. They're going around giving their names. One of the little kids, these are almost all white kids. There may have been 2 or 3 kids who weren't white out of, I want to say, 30 kids or so. The one kid, after he's introduced himself, a white kid goes, he's Mexican. Well, first of all, the little kid who just spoke wasn't Mexican. He was clearly Japanese American. So right there, it's like, okay, this little child has picked up on a difference. Where would the child have gotten this perception of a difference? And how does Japanese American default into Mexican? Other than somewhere at home, some conversation about Mexicans and Mexican Americans made all kids who aren't black and white othered as Mexican. Does that make sense what I'm saying? And so if that little kid made that misperception, like that factual misperception, what besides the facts was the kid also taught at a young? So back to your point, Deidre, little kids are watching everything. I mean, we all hear the stories. I mean, I'm not a parent. Full disclosure, I am not a parent, which means I'm not a grandparent, which means I just know what y'all's kids do. Okay. And not my own. And everybody talks about, what you say and do in front of your kids, but we forget how many screens our children look at. Our children look at a lot of screens. Our children look at more screens today than they did growing up. See, I'm an only child, so growing up, my brothers and sisters were books and the TV. And I was watching stuff that was completely inappropriate because I had a TV set and I loved watching TV. I still love watching TV. So, this gets back to art as social justice in the sense that even people who weren't trying to do social justice were still putting their perspectives about the world in the stories that they wrote. So, if you go back to my presentation, I have this quote from Cornel West that I've always loved. I don't always love Cornel West, but I love this quote. And this quote is, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. And I absolutely love that quote because it's about, we can say we're loving people to the people who we love, but what does our behavior and how we treat people look like once we leave our house? So I'm going to show you one of my favorite clips. I'm going to show it to you, the representation YouTube, and then I'm going to tell you why it's such an important. So let me set it up first before you hit play, Mariah. So I don't know who's watched the TV show How to Get Away with Murder. It just went off the air, and the lead character is played by Viola Davis, who played a lawyer, a fierce lawyer who was also a law school professor, who had more drama than the law allowed. And Cicely Tyson was an irregular, but would occasionally come on as her mother. And her mother is visiting her after Annalise's husband has died, and he just didn't, he died, but it was under some crazy, messy circumstances. So I'm gonna leave it at that if you haven't watched it. So, Mariah, if you could hit the clip for me, or hit the video for me.
Right, there's no sound.
And in the worst case scenario, there we go. Still don't hear it, but
If you stop your screen share and then restart your screen share, at the bottom left corner, there's a button that says share audio with your video.
We'll keep you around, Kelsey.
This
Ain't
is
your
the-
baby saw 3 of them beautiful ones.
this is why I was like, y'all go do the technology, right? Because if it was me in charge of technology, I would be like, okay, so then Annalise said this, and then her mama said this. So while we're waiting, I gave a talk at a school, at a college in Illinois, where I didn't even show this clip. I just talked about this clip. And it was just really interesting to see my comments and how the Black students received it, and how they were like foot stomping, clapping, like, yes. And the white people were like, okay, what is so deep about what she just said in relation to what she's talking about? And I'll tell you, but I want you to see the clip first. Just let me know when we can.
Well, instead of having little background music while we're waiting, is there, Mariah, do you even have sound? She's in a room that I think has spotty internet. Is that part of your issue, Mariah?
Yes.
Okay, let's see what it does.
Okay.
Not all screen share.
Right.
Nope. Okay.
And it's not the end of the other two clips
So
are
take it off
more
screen
ones.
share and let me do it. I'll do it real quick. But why don't while I'm doing that, I'm just wonder if anyone else has had that experience with their kids, or as a teacher, or with a parent, or just, in reaction to what Michelle's been talking about with regard to how we other people, intentionally or otherwise.
Well, I think that educators in general, when you have a kid in class and they're acting out, you think, man, why is this kid acting like this? And you're not really realizing what happened to make that child act that way. So there's more, what we see in the behavior acting out is there's so much more beneath it than what we look at surface wise. Is that it kind of ties into that, I think.
Yeah, and in my example with the little kid, it wasn't even like it was a negative. He wasn't saying something. He wasn't saying he's Mexican. He thought he was adding an interesting detail to the introductions. And my point is, what else in that interesting detail is he both seeing and adding that then has implications for how this little kid sees anybody who's not a white kid like himself, or most of the kids in the school? And that's more of the thing that I think educators sometimes, and parents even, don't look at. It's like, what are your kids absorbing that you don't even realize they're absorbing? I'll give you another example, since this is a parents group. Same school, older kid. This was right after Obama's second election. And again, this was a Black kid who said something problematic. And because he was older, I'm sorry, it wasn't a Black kid. I'm confusing my incidents. This was a child who was white, who said to a Black student, "Oh, I guess you can get free lunches. You're going to keep getting free lunches now that, Obama won again." Now, there were no such thing as free lunches at the school. Not that there's anything wrong with free lunches, but when I asked the kid, "Why did you say that?" He goes, "Well, I said, let me rephrase it. What did Obama do to you? Did he take away your cookies?" And he laughs at me and he goes, I said, "Because seriously, you're like in the 7th grade. What do you know about Barack Obama?" He goes, "Well, my dad doesn't like him." I said, So when I called his mother to say, "This is the conversation that I had with your child because this happened at school," she goes, "Well, he wouldn't say that." I hadn't told her the part about the father. He goes, he wouldn't say that. And I said, "But he did. He admitted that he said it." "Well, I don't believe that he said that." I said, "So was he not telling the truth when he told me that he's heard your husband make disparaging remarks about Barack Obama at home?" And there was silence on the line. There was absolute silence on the line. And then she kind of had to backtrack. And this is just an example of your kids are listening and they're extrapolating past even the specific things you say. Like, you may think you're just speaking about A, but we're all adults. We hear B as well as A. Sometimes C, D, E, and F. Okay, where are we? Sorry, on this topic, I can go on forever, y'all. Y'all have to shut me up. We can skip this one if we have to, because I can explain, because you all have seen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. A second ago, were you hearing my video?
I wasn't.
Yeah,
No.
I think we need to could you see it? I think we need to just move on.
Yeah,
I don't
we'll move on. That's okay. So the
happening.
thing that hopefully we can get at least the next two, but if not, I can talk around that. It's not a big deal. But the reason why this clip was really important is that Annalise, who was like I said, played by Viola Davis, was sitting on the floor as her mother, played by Cicely Tyson, was greasing her scalp. Now, if you Black, raise your hand if you Black and you've had your scalp greased. Hello. Okay, everybody knows some Black people with the Black women with the hands raised, because that is such. And then if you see the clip, the conversation that they were having, because the mother, Cicely Tyson, is telling her daughter about something in the past, really awful and horrific that happened, that connects to how upset her daughter was about something. And as I was watching it, you know, the first time I saw it watching the show, I was like, when have I ever, as a Black woman, seen such a personal, emotional, relatable experience involving hair on network TV? And when I said that, the Black kids went nuts. They went nuts. And when I saw the confused white kids, I said, you all are confused by what the reaction is about, aren't you? And they were like, I mean, cool, the cool kids. They were like, oh yeah. I said, because it's what you're confused, because as white people, when have you ever not seen your hair mentioned in movies, on TV shows, in commercials? Like, it's not that big a deal to see a scene where a mother and a daughter, where a mother is brushing their daughter's hair. How many times have we seen a movie where a white mother is brushing their daughter's hair? Right? Okay. Or how many times have we seen a movie and we've had the reaction where we see a father who's white doing their daughter's hair? So then we get all in the, we're getting all in the emotions and the feels of, oh, what a good dad, he's doing his child's hair, you know, because, you know, when men do anything that is remotely, I'm sorry guys, get mad at me if you want to, but you know I'm not lying. When guys do anything that remotely looks in public like they're a good parent, people are like, oh my God, he's the best father in the world. I'm like, yeah, but you know, the mother was just doing that 5 minutes ago, right? So that's why the scene in How to Get Away with Murder was so significant, because it was something we don't see as Black people. But that was a Trojan horse moment. That was a Trojan horse moment where Shonda Rhimes, who was the producer and the writer sometimes for How to Get Away with Murder, put Black people right at the center of the story in a way that wasn't stereotypical or comfortable. So like when when they show Annalise Viola Davis in full makeup with the wig on in front of her class, doing all this, sort of like Kerry Washington's character on Scandal, Olivia Pope, like we all, if you even if you're a white person who's never met a Black person, you can look at the women in those modes and be like, oh yeah, oh wow, that's impressive. Oh. Because they're operating in ways that we think are the norm for professional women. But seeing a Black woman between her mama's legs on the floor, getting her scalp creased, we're gonna have a moment for that. Because that is representation at its finest. And that is, Portia, I see you nodding your head because you know what I'm talking about, right? Because it's not until you see people's humanity that you care about their humanity when it is threatened. You know, I'd like to think, because I'm a corny person this way, that in addition to the criminal justice aspect of the George Floyd case, that we as a nation, even folks maybe who aren't, you know, not open, but that we as a nation, at least for a moment, saw the humanity, although bad, of a Black man crying for his mother as a cop's knee is on his neck. Like, who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to the heart space of, I don't care how grown you are. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how many initials are after your name where when you are hurt, you are in pain, you cry for your mama. And if we can get united behind why that's important, that's the essence of Black Lives Matters. You know, not the politics of Black Lives Matters, but the humanity of it. You know, if you take nothing away from anything I say today, that's an important aspect of what I'm talking about, of art as social justice, art as the vehicle, art as the horse that makes you think about things in a way that you've never thought about, because you see characters, you fall into the story that you're watching. You know, I've been a diversity speaker slash trainer slash writer since approximately 2004. And I have given many a speech. I have given many a talk. I have led many a workshop. I'm damn good at it, if I do say so myself. And I have to say that because 98% of the things I do in life, I'm not so good at. We won't go there. We won't have a therapy session. But I know that even the best speech I can give on diversity, race, inclusion, equity is nothing compared to when I became a playwright. And I had characters. I had characters who embodied that. You know, in fact, if we're gonna have if we're having problems with the videos I have, that's okay, because what we can do is we can skip to I'm not sure what number slide this is, Mariah, but one of my Trojan horses. If we skip to that, because my guess is that the audio clip that I have will work, but if we go to the one that looks like this, yeah, that one, that's it. Okay, so this is one of what I call my Trojan horses, and everybody here is from Kansas City, so you will all feel me on what this is about. So 30 Americans was this traveling exhibit of nothing but Black / African American art that was at the Nelson Art Gallery. And I'd done some work with Nelson before, and one of the leaders there commissioned me to write a play about the exhibit that was going to end up being the closing event of their months of things, which is a big deal. You know, I'm a fourth generation Kansas City, and so, oh my God, the premier art gallery is asking me to do something, right? I was like, oh my God. And then I get to write about anything I want. So at the opening night of events, I had not yet written my play. And I leaned over to a girlfriend of mine who had gone with me to the opening night, where they laid out all the events that were going to happen during the course of the exhibition. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to write, but I know this is going to be Black, Black, Blackity, Black, Black, Black. I'm going to put Black all up in the Nelson Art Gallery. And I did. And so, because the exhibition was all these pieces of art, I said to myself, what 2 pieces of art speak to me that I could turn into characters to have a conversation? So what you see on the screen on the left is, believe it or not, that's me in the corner. I'm not putting that in because I'm in it, but I do look good in that dress, so that's why I didn't crop myself out. That's me before the event started, and then that's the poster, which is sitting in my living room in Louisville right now because I love that poster. But then to the right, you see these are the 2 characters that I wrote about, but they're actual exhibits. So Mariah, if we could go to the next one. I think, and if we can't play the audio clip, that's not the end of the world.
I say you try again, Mariah. I don't know. I played around with the audio settings.
If
On
you
my
can't, I
computer.
can
I
just
don't
tell
know
you.
what is going on today. It's
That's okay.
all
And if you, again, as I told you all, clips and audio and pictures are nice, but I can do this without it. Don't worry about it. You know what? Let's just go back to the to the to the PowerPoint. That's fine. You guys there?
We're here. I don't, can you hear?
I can hear you, but I don't see anything.
So is there a link on one of these screens?
There was supposed to be, but I don't see it in my copy of this. Don't worry about it. Let's just go back to the last slide we
We'll
had.
have it right by Sunday. Come back on Sunday and you can
That's
see the
right.
clips.
Well, I'll be doing this from Louisville on Sunday. So yeah, if we could just, can we get back?
Where do you want to be in the slides?
Just go back to one of my Trojan horses. I'm just seeing all blue screen. Can you all see me?
Okay, so can nobody else see because we can see I can see the PowerPoint. Can everybody
All
else
I
see it?
literally have is a blue screen.
I can see the PowerPoint.
Okay, I just can't, I've somehow been kicked out visually. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go.
Got it?
Okay, so here we go. So how I started off this play, because the other thing that crossed my mind when they asked me to do this commission is, if ever there's somebody who's from both sides of the so-called track, it's me. And so what has always been of interest to me about Nelson Art Gallery is where it sits. And so I put this into the characterization. I have the male character talk about, here we are visiting another city where we're, you go, where we're placed in this really nice neighborhood that's nothing but white people. And you go, you don't have to travel that far to see Black people. So the clip was talking about how we have the docent who's talking about, and the lovely Nelson Art Gallery, where if you go just, half a mile to the west, you see the best dining and architecture and blah, 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 blah. And so then as soon as the brother hears that, he's like, ain't that a blip? Yeah, but you go in the other direction, you get KFC, Dollar General, and buildings you ain't gonna see in no architecture books, right? So I'm immediately having the characters talk about the dichotomy between where art is placed, and then because this is a traveling exhibit, these characters as pieces of art have traveled with this exhibit for like 10, 15 years. So I'm having him I'm blanking on my own character's name. I think it was I can't remember, but he's talking about, yeah,
Raj.
in every city.
It was Raj.
Look at you, knowing my
I saw
play
the
better
play.
than me. Right, exactly. But he talks about how in every city, it's the same dynamic, where the Black folks who should be seeing this don't even, aren't even, it's not even catered to them. But the white folks, this is where the museum is. I mean, think about where Nelson is placed, people. Think about where Nelson is placed. There are people who either visit Kansas City or who live in Kansas City, mind you, who have not gone literally east of where Nelson is. Nelson is a block, 2 blocks away from Kansas City's color line. And that color line has transcended generations. When I was a reporter here at KCUR, I did a story. Again, social justice can be done in journalism. It just has to be done more carefully, right? So I did a story on how, what I did was I went to the library, and I went through the microfiche. Who's heard that word in a while? Microfiche. And I deliberately picked the year before I was born, 1963, and I picked 5 houses that were on east of Troost and 5 houses that were west of Troost that were selling for approximately the same amount of money. And then I did Zillow on what the cost, what these houses are appraised at now. And the difference between the highest house on the east side of Troost and the lowest house west of Troost, we're talking houses that you could buy for like $15,000 in 1963. Man, wouldn't you like to buy a nice house for $15,000 right now? But $15,000, and it was something like a $200,000 difference. 200,000. I think the biggest gap was something closer to 400,000. And so when people talk about the wealth gap, my point of my story is I called it the compound interest of discrimination. And that is what my play was trying to, and so if you've ever seen a play of mine, so if you go to the next slide, The Joy.
Before you go to the next
Mhm.
slide,
Yeah, yes.
take us off screen for share for just a second, Mariah. So I don't know if anyone on my team was able to go with us to the 30 Americans Museum. Bree, you went, didn't you? Bree went to try to fix the Zoom, see if she couldn't help with the video. But the crazy thing was I saw the play after all of our staff went to the exhibit.
Right.
And our experience was everything you said. One was many of our staff had never been to the museum before. So that in and of itself was an experience for them. But the docents didn't know anything about the exhibit. They could not speak in a meaningful way to what some of our staff's questions were. It's an entirely African-American exhibit, and every docent was white and probably about 75 years old.
Yeah.
And they hadn't been trained on the exhibit. And it played out like exactly the way that the reason we do what we do with art and with our families and their experiences and connections and opportunities to go to the museums or have the museums and the art experiences come to a UICS facility is because of all of what you just said. So our first step is bringing the experiences to our centers. The next is to create the comfort and remove the barriers for our families to go to the museums themselves, because as kids, unless it was a field trip, they probably haven't been. And even on the field trips, it might not have been the most fun experience. But, you know, I know Bree is probably in there trying to mess with the Zoom, but she's our art coordinator at St. Mark. And I know you were on the team when we went to the exhibit. I don't know what your experience was, if you wanted to add anything, or it might be a good time. We don't have this exact same audience. She just did in conjunction with Black History Month, this entire thing with the kids surrounding the color brown and the mixing of paint to create the color brown and what the conversations with our students were as well.
Do you know that my mother had never been to Nelson Art Gallery before until she came to my play that night? And that blows my mind because I've always loved the Nelson Art Gallery, but I realized she had never been the one to take me. But either been the school that took me or I took myself because I was a weird kid. And when I said that to the person who had commissioned me, she gave my mother and my stepfather 2 tickets to see the exhibit. And one of the proudest moments of my life that had nothing to do with nothing was my mother texting me a couple of days later to say, we went and I loved it.
Hey, I hear some audio somewhere, but I don't know if it was where it was coming from.
But
Bree,
yeah,
do you
so
want to
it's-
add anything about what you're doing with the students or your experience when you went to the Nelson?
Sure. And I'm kind of screen hopping right now because I've been in your office and now Mariah's, but
I know she's our resident tech expert.
yeah, on the side. Well, I wouldn't say expert. We kind of played with it, but this computer is a little different. So we may have figured it out. But yeah, with the kids, first of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm really enjoying this so much. And I find you really funny, but also really easy to listen to. So I just want to tell you I appreciate this so much.
Thank you.
And also, yeah, our kids have been to the Nelson several times, and the Nelson has come to us several times. And I really enjoyed the exhibit that we got to go see last year. It made me think really hard, and it made me cry, to be honest with you. It was a really hard exhibit to walk through and everything. But I thought it was really important. And then I thought how lucky we are to get to do things like this with our whole organization, to work somewhere where you take professional field trips to learn these kind of things is just not something afforded to every art teacher. So that was really neat. But with the kids, yeah, on the last Zoom, we talked a little bit about something we did back in January, because the majority of our students are of diverse backgrounds and have various skin tones. And myself being a white educator, I try to be really intentional about the books we choose, the art we look at, and the artists that come in and work with our kids too, so that they have plenty of representation and understand that more than just their art teacher that they have, there are plenty of artists of color and educators of color. So we did a study, and it started fairly innocently back in January. I just saw something online. I was reading this book actually about color theory, which is something that's always interested in me, in the psychology of color, and how teachers and art teachers, particularly with young children, put out palettes that don't result in brown or shades of brown. We try to get them to use, somebody called it like refrigerator worthy colors, like, you know, neons and pastels and rainbow colors. And then we wonder what messages that sends to children about those shades, and them being those shades. It got me thinking, you know, I'm guilty of that. I love to say, you know, are you sure that's the color you'd like to choose? Let's look at the bumblebee. What colors do you see in the bumblebee? Let's use that when they're perfectly happy and they're at an age that developmentally it's appropriate to want to mix every color. They don't care what it turns into. I care, or their teacher cares, or their mom cares. And so I intentionally took a step back and intentionally put out, said the word intentionally a lot, but that's really what it was, is putting out those colors that would result in brown and shades of brown and tints of brown, and giving those shades and tints names, cinnamon and umber and sienna, and all the real names for those colors. And then looking at our skins and seeing and celebrating the shades of our skin, and realizing that we're all on the same spectrum. Nobody is white truly, and nobody is black truly. We are ebony, or we are cinnamon, or we are beige, or we are peach, you know. So it was really just a celebration of the color brown. We painted with our hands on the ground, and looked at our hands together and celebrated our differences and our similarities. And so it was really just about the conversation we had while we were making, and that led us to talk about, you know, we have some students with different amounts of fingers on their hands, and so then we were noticing and celebrating our differences in the amount of fingers we have. And it was just a really good opportunity for us all to see our differences, notice them, and celebrate them. So yeah, it's on the wall in the hall. It looks kind of like an animal hide, but it was a really, really neat thing that we did over the course of a week with every student.
But it's good that you used the word intention several times, because that's the whole point of art as a Trojan horse. You have to do it intentionally. You have to think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and what you're not thinking through, and what you're not. I mean, even though I'm not a parent, I have jokingly said that if I was a parent, my kids would be so sick of me, because I would be making every damn TV show an object lesson. Like everything would be like, you know, okay, let's sit down and talk about what just happened. Yeah. And it's like, Mom, can I just watch the soap opera? Because to me, you know, again, it's storytelling that helps you almost forget the point, because you've been emotionally hijacked by the story. On my drive here, it's about a 7.5 hour drive, and I stopped, of course, a couple of times. But I'm a true crime buff person, and I was listening to this really interesting podcast called the dating game killer, and he had so many victims it wasn't even funny, from little kids to adult women. And it really wasn't funny because it was tragic, actually, the number of girls and women he killed. But every single living girl who was interviewed for the podcast, or a living woman, said, yeah, I'd always been told, don't talk to strangers, but I talked to him. I've always been told not to get in the car with strangers, but I got in the car with him. I'd always been, you know what I'm saying? So to me, if I had like I'm old enough to have a grandkid. If I had a granddaughter who was old enough, I'd be like, okay, you need to listen to this podcast. You need to listen to know that everything that I've taught you and your parents have taught you about why you don't do certain things, here's how this plays out. Because the story is so compelling, I think that somebody would be more compelled, they would get it more through hearing a story than they would just their mother or their dad saying, don't do that. I mean, how many of us have actually listened to our parents? I mean, we listen and we go, okay, and then we go do something else. I would love to play my favorite clip from TV that made me scream and holla, and that I occasionally have to find on YouTube. And it is the one that is marked, let me see, I'm sorry, my slides are all Insight. And it's from the show Scandal. Any Scandal fans in the house? From the Scandal knock? Hello. And when Olivia Pope, the main character's mother, who was arrested for something, but she gave this monologue that I was like, did I write that monologue in my sleep, submit it to Scandal, and they forgot to pay me? Because it was just one of those, like, it was something that if you don't know Black women, you might be like, whoa, where is that coming from? So if you could play that, that would be, y'all can just join me in the moment.
We're gonna make it work this time.
Yes. Because if we don't, then I'll put it on my cell phone and you'll be listening to it to my cell phone.
Damn shame. I tell you, being a Black woman, be strong, they say. Support your man. Raise a man. Think like a man. Well, damn, I gotta do all that. Who's out here working for me? Carrying my burden, building me up when I get down? Nobody. Black women out here trying to save everybody, and what do we get? Swagger jacked by white girls wearing cornrows and bamboo earrings. Ain't that a bitch? But we still try. Try to help all y'all, even when we get nothing. Is that admirable or ridiculous? I don't know. I know me sitting here is ridiculous when I could be helping, but you don't want my help. You want to do it all by yourself. Mr. Big Strong Black Man. God forbid you let a sister like me help you out. No, you don't want that. Don't let me put you on my back when you fall. Wipe the crust out of your eyes. Put a pep back in your step. Because when we do, you resent us for making you better, smarter, stronger. Then drop us so you can be with someone basic. Someone without all that baggage you left us with. But we still try. That's why I'm here. Trying and saving and trying to save like we do. Here I am. Admirable or ridiculous? Baby, you tell me.
In 2005, Dr. Pepper sent 3 flavorists into a vault.
I'm sorry, y'all. I could watch that clip over and over again. So I gotta ask, who has thoughts about that clip? Please, please, please say something to me.
So my
Be like,
daughter, who's 28, called me this morning. And actually, I do listen to my mom, and she's on here listening to me today. Isn't it nice when you get
"Aw,
to have the reverse happen? But
nice.
so she calls, and she was having issues
Mm,
at work about being the angry Black female and being misunderstood. And so the clip talks about the relationship between the Black woman and the Black man. What about all the other relationships of Black women with the public and with their bosses and with the
mhm,
teachers they're interacting with, where it's the constant setting aside of the person in order to be heard?
mhm. Any other thoughts?
I think what I hear or actually reacted to was the collection of feelings that run as the undercurrent
Mhm,
to conversations or interactions. That there is function, and
mhm,
then there is just the suppression of your feelings and your emotions. As for this character, for myself as a Black woman, that there is a suppression of your emotions, and that is never allowed to
mhm.
show up. Um, so yeah, that's which
Yeah.
is a reality, that as a Black woman, that your emotions are, it is not appropriate for your emotions to show up. And this is just the peeling back, or the opening up of, or the opening of the curtains, where you get to see what's happening behind the scenes. And behind the scenes of that support and strength and innovation is layers of resentment, layers of
Mhm,
additional oppression, layers of additional othering, layers of additional, um, uh, I guess, disenfranchisement that really a good portion of the world never actually realize exists,
mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
alongside the power that most people interpret.
Mhm. Yeah, I always have the same, even watching it with you all just now, the same emotional react. First of all, I too love Candy Alexander, Jennifer. Yes, yes, all hail the queen. But it was the best of art. It was the writing, it was the acting, it was the directing, it was all of it. And it went deeper than the actual plot. That's why I could play this, and y'all don't have to know nothing about the plot to get what she was talking about. And I think about how every time there is some big thing, like we all just saw it with the election, right? Where everybody is like, oh, Stacey Abrams, yo, Stacey, y'all love Black women so much when Black women help the collective, okay? But what coins are in her pocket? What votes did she get when she ran for governor? Okay, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like that Candy Alexander monologue, there are so many times when it could be just like put out on social media and be like, okay, that's my commentary for today on that. Because it's because art is about something, when it's done well, art is about something that is far deeper than what you are seeing. And my like and so in my clips aside, my presentation, I have, if we go back, the joy, right? So after I've explained to you um about the show, I have the picture, the joy, right? And I love this picture because you can see how the actors embodied the works of art, but you see them having fun because I like to have fun and lightness and levity in my work. But then the next slide is the pathos. Because if all you get from my work is the laughter, if all you get from my work is the joy, if all you get from this talk today, yes, the pathos, but very, very, very serious, you know, because it's about the things, like if I can't make you laugh and cry, or at least want to cry, I have not done my job as a playwright. And you know, even at this, that's great. I know I use humor. I'm a down to earth person. I use all of that to communicate. But if all you get from any talk, any play of mine is humor, is the laughs, then you didn't listen to the underlying thing. There's a play of mine called The Green Book Wine Club Train Trip. Mariah knows it. Mariah knows it very well. And it's a
I
play
saw
that
that too,
you saw that too. Good, good, good.
and my
So
mom was
it's,
with me.
yes, it's one of my favorite. You know, you're not supposed to have favorites of your children. That's one of my favorite children, is that play. And it's a play that I wrote that is about time travel, in the sense that it's 5 Black women. One of them, she's on a train trip with her friends. One of them, Marie, accidentally time travels to the 1940s, and her 4 friends are play the 4 different characters in the 1940s. And yes, it has jokes and laughs and all that, because you can't not joke and laugh about the difference between 2 major time periods. But there is a monologue that Marie gives where she talks about, what if I accidentally get stuck here in the 1940s as a Black woman? Where she says something to the effect, because I believe it or not, I don't remember word for word my own writings, where she says something to the effect of, yeah, there is discrimination, you know, where I come from. There are things that I can't do as easily as somebody who's not a white guy, but at least I get to try. If I'm here, if I have to remain as a Black woman in 1946, I don't even get to do that. Like, I legally, people can tell me I can't walk into a restaurant. You know, people can tell me that I am not hired because, the things that we take for granted. And one of the things I like to always remind people on my Facebook page, it's almost like a periodic reminder. You all do realize that I was born the year that Jim Crow ended. So when you all talk about how discrimination and segregation was so long ago, a good number of you all who are on my Facebook page, you were alive when it was legal to keep me from doing all the things that you love to see me. Pretty much everything in my life that you all are so impressed by. If I was an adult the year I was born, somebody could say legally, you can't live there, go there, eat there, talk there, work there, speak there, write there. Do I look that old? I mean, I don't want to ask y'all that today, because I'm in, this is pandemic times where I have not had the beauty care that one is used to having. So I very well may look my age today, but I still, on my worst day, don't look 200 years old. Right? And so that's the thing, that why I like to write about the past and juxtapose it with the current in my work. Because to me, that's the way you get people to sort of step back and look at things. Because my friend who I'm staying with in this trip, who's a white woman in her 70s. And she said, one of the things that most pisses me off about my own people is that we forget history, that we complain about things without realizing the historical context of why something is. I'm like, and this is why you were one of my best friends, because that is exactly right. So, we only have about 12 minutes left, and I want to talk to you all and challenge you. What are ways that you think that you can use art, existing art, not even creating art, ex oh, stop it, Tim. Existing art, whether we're talking TV shows, movies, something you see on the internet, on Al Gore's internet. What are ways that you can use art to have different conversations with your kids?
I feel like I'm in a unique position here because I am an early educator. I am an employee of UICS and I'm a parent of 2 Black boys. And so I get to use I can share kind of how I and UICS use how we use art. And I would say that it is the Trojan horse, that there are materials provided that feel commonplace, that your children are playing in house area with foods that are from diverse ethnic groups. So they're playing with sushi and they're playing with pita bread and they're playing with all different items that have been placed there to look commonplace. But the Trojan horse is that all cultures live here, like all cultures. So I've invested in putting my children in spaces that honor diversity in that way, that the books on the shelf are books that you would see anywhere. And then there are also lots of books that intentionally have been procured to show protagonists of color and women protagonists. And then that leads into conversations where you just automatically see yourself as the protagonist in your life. Like if I'm going to be a firefighter, I've seen a brown firefighter, so that's me. I'm the brown firefighter. So I think that UICS does a wonderful way of using art and materials in the classrooms to share with children this Trojan horse idea of what you look like is common, that representation piece appears in books and materials and children and the artists that we pay for residencies to support the idea that just what you look like exists in the world in many different ways, and that is normal.
Yeah, books are great for that.
Yeah.
Especially for little kids. I mean, one of my first jobs in high school to help pay my tuition in high school was I worked in the children's library at Plaza Library. Remember when there was that other building, a whole different Plaza Library building on the plaza, for those of you who are old enough? And I mean, little kids, there's so many more opportunities that little kids have today for you to show them a world that isn't just who you are. One of my, back to art as social justice, one of my mother's finest mothering moments, parenting moments. She doesn't even know how many times I have repeated this to people. So when Roots came on, the original Roots came on, I was a kid at St. Francis Xavier, mostly white kids, although there was, St. Francis, I love St. Francis, some diversity, but it was a white private Catholic school. And I made the mistake of saying I didn't want to watch Roots. And it wasn't because it was Black or slavery. It was the little kids' mentality of, that's history. I don't want to watch history. I want to watch something fun. My mother went so off on me in all the good ways. It was like, look, you better not ever forget who you are, where you come from. Just because you go to school every day and you sit next to all them white kids doesn't mean that you were not a Black kid that doesn't need to know every damn thing there is to know about your background, your heritage. You're going to watch it and you're going to love it. And if you don't love it, you're going to love it. Straight up Black parenting. And she was right? You know what I mean? Like, she was right. for all those reasons. Like most Black kids who are one of the few in predominantly white institutions, I've seen adults do this. I mean, don't get me started on that. You have to have reminders that your trajectory of how you got here was different than your coworkers or that your fellow students, that you have to help your kids place who they are in the spectrum of where they go every day. That's why, like, even still, like a friend of mine who's white is really into ancestry. Like, she is literally like traced her ancestry like 18 generations, and she wanted to do mine. And I'm like, Kathy, that's not going to work for you. What do you mean? What do you mean? Trust me on this. It's not going to work for you. But you know what? You wanted to trace my ancestry. You go right ahead. Well, gee, what a surprise. She could only trace me back 4 generations.
I
And
think,
these are the
oh,
conversations we need to have. And I'm sorry, go on. Somebody said something.
no, I think that intentional is kind of the word of the day. I mean,
It
I think
is.
that I would say to all parents and grandparents and everybody's has a child in their world. I mean, one of the things that's different for all of us on here, other than maybe some of the parents that are millennials, is that our kids are growing up on screens in a different way than we did. And so I think that as parents, art becomes a tremendous way for you to find out what's really going on with your kids, because we don't they don't communicate the same
Right.
way that we communicated. And it takes a lot of work to try to find out what the feelings are that are underneath. And I think that if we want to build bridges that we say we want to build, that across all racial lines, we have to be very intentional about the way we go about exposing children to everything that's similar and different than them, because otherwise we'll have another 50 years from now, the exact same thing going on today, going on again. You can drive around Kansas City. We have some of the best murals in town, and the murals tell a story. And there's so many ways. I mean, you don't even have to spend money doing a lot of what we're talking about. You don't need materials, and there's an artist in all of us. And I tell the story all the time about hating art as a kid because I couldn't do it right. But like, we're all creating something, and whatever that creative bent of yours is figuring out what that interest is for your children and for the children in your lives, and using art as that opportunity just to have conversation and to use it to find out, whether it's books, whether it's painting, whether it's dancing, whether it's acting. There's so many ways to use that, to use it as a communication tool. But there's lots of parents on here. Like, what are you doing? What do you want to be doing? What are you thinking about? What's art to you? What's your reaction to what Michelle has
And
had to
you
say
and
today?
you and I would challenge you as a parent to Trojan horse as a parent. So sit down with your kid and watch a movie. Act like you just watched the movie because you just want to watch the movie. And then ask them questions afterwards. Like, I mean, I personally had never seen Frozen. So, I mean, I don't know if there are any Black people in Frozen. So, are brown people in Frozen? I don't know nothing about Frozen except that stupid song, Let It Go. And I'm like, let that song go, please. But, you have the opportunity to, at any time, just kind of casually, like in a car ride, after you've seen something, while you're making, because, one of the things we all know is, which gets back to the Black women scene from How to Get Away with Murder. The reason why that is a common thing for Black women, your mama putting you on the floor, whether you're 4, 14, or 34, and greasing your hair, you're not facing one another. You're not facing one another. You're not directly having the conversation. You are sort of like, we women who are heterosexual, with men, you can't directly ask them nothing. You got to wait until they are captive doing something else, right? Like you have to side swipe them on how you bring up a conversation. Man, am I wrong? Stop me when I get to lying. Am I wrong? You know that when a woman says to you, we need to talk, you know, you find an exit door, even if you had to thank you, Jason, even if you have to make one that did not exist before. And I think that that's the way a lot of these hard conversations about race can be handled, is, you know, you sort of side swipe, backdoor, you use art as, what did you think of that? Did you notice this? What did you think of that? And I think it leads to so many absolutely amazing conversations that you didn't think you were capable of having with folks. So on that note, thank you all for letting me run my mouth about my favorite topic, my favorite two topics for an hour and a half. I really appreciate this.
We are sorry for the technical difficulties. You pivoted very beautifully.
Yeah.
We're adding dancer to your repertoire.
This is what I do. You can have me ask me to speak on 100 other topics, and if the technology didn't work, I'd be like, but on this, it's like, oh, I got this. I got y'all, boo. I got this. We got it. We all right. But I'm glad that the Candy Alexander one at least worked, because that's what.
Exactly.
It was really great to be with all of you today, building some bridges, building a bit of community the day after a monumental decision that is beginning of a new day, but we are all in this together. And I thank you for sharing your children with us. I thank you for our community partners that have joined us today. For my mom being here, Rebecca, for you helping to craft this, and Mariah.
Hey, Mama, by the way. Hello, Mama. I didn't give you your proper shout out.
Yes. And have a wonderful afternoon, and feel free to join back in on Sunday. They never look exactly the same. So 4:30 on Sunday, we'll have a similar conversation.
I think you all can guess that this is not going to be the exact same conversation. So
come back.
Yeah. Right. All right. Thank you.
Parents, we'll have gift cards for you at your center. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.
Bye.